Welcome. I'll get us started. My name is Corinne Waldow. I'm the Economic Development Director for the Boulder Chamber, and I want to thank you for joining this week's Office, Field Services and Real Estate, and Manufacturing call. We offer these weekly opportunities for you to ask questions, get updates, and provide feedback when we ask it. I know we have quite a few updates this week for at least two of the sections on today's call, so we'll get straight to it. But first, I want to wish everybody a happy 4th. I hope it was healthy, and I hope it was happy, and I hope a lot of you got some relaxation over this time. We'll hand it off right now to Jesse Rounds with the Boulder County Public Health.
Thanks, Corinne. I'm going to advance the slides here, and please let me know. I was in a session last week, and the slides didn't advance, so someone let me know if the slides don't advance. But I'm going to just give a little rundown, and then I'm going to hand it off to my colleagues who are the experts in the particular industries. So first up, I just want to give you a little bit background on what we'll be talking about. I'm going to give you an update on our public health orders, a little bit on our epidemiological situation, some information on Protect Our Neighbors, and then we'll jump into sector updates and Q&A. So in terms of the timeline, this has been pretty stable the last couple of weeks. The big news is that as of yesterday, the state announced that it was taking applications for Protect Our Neighbors, the Protect Our Neighbor framework, which is the next step in the public health orders issued by the state. And I'll get into more detail about that as we go along. In terms of the long-term outlook, we are in this for the long haul. The public health orders will remain in place for months to come. And that's because we don't have a vaccine, we don't have a reliable treatment, and we haven't reached herd immunity yet. And so the virus is still just as contagious as it was in February. And it has just as much chance of overwhelming our public health system and the hospital system as it did back in February. So that's why the county re-upped and extended indefinitely the face covering order. And the face covering order is really intended to cover everyone who's inside a business, everyone who's inside an office, everyone who is going out into public and is inside a building. It also covers when you're outside and you can't maintain social distancing of 6 feet. And that really comes down to what our message is, and that's why there's a bunch of text on this slide, because I think it's really important that we all recognize that if all of us wear masks in situations when we're outside of our own homes, we can help reduce the stigma attached to wearing masks, and that will help protect our most vulnerable communities, and it will promote that behavior in all situations. Like I said, we've extended the face covering order, and I do want to mention that a number of cities have instituted or are considering instituting additional face covering orders that may be more stringent. So I really check with your city if you are within a municipality to ensure that you are abiding by the strictest order. Lastly here, I just want to point out the face covering script. It's a script that we developed internally because we were getting a lot of questions about or from business owners saying, I'm having trouble communicating with people who don't want to wear masks, and I want to provide them with services, but I don't know how to communicate to them that we can provide them services, we just can't provide them services inside our business, things like curbside pickup and online ordering and that sort of thing. And the face covering script really goes over a lot of the ways that you can do that and sort of walks you through a step-by-step conversation. And this was mentioned, this was sort of highlighted in an earlier slide, but I think it's really important to think about the activity you are proposing to do, or thinking about in the case of businesses, what your customers are thinking about as they enter your business? What level of risk are they taking on? What level of risk are you taking on in your daily activities? And just thinking about how your perception of risk may differ from someone else's perception of risk, but that any of these activities where we're going outside our house mean we're taking on risk. Quickly changing gears, we are still providing a lot of background information for businesses at our boco.org COVID-19 business website. A lot of that links to the state's website, but there are specific internally generated sources of information. Things like the script links to our mask order, links to some charts that were made up to visually show when and where you need to wear a mask. And in addition, links to posters that were developed by the Chamber of Commerce to really identify or just posters that you could post at your business to sort of promote good behavior. These other sources of information are great. They are very business specific. Another one I'll highlight is energizecolorado.com. That continues to be a great source for materials that you may need. Jumping to the public health orders, we are still in Safer at Home. We're now at the 8th revision of that. And the three big changes that came out of that, my colleagues are going to talk about some other changes, but the three big changes that the state highlighted were: bars without food service are now closed. That means any bar that doesn't have a relationship with a food truck or a licensed food source on the property needs to be closed. Libraries may open under the indoor events guidance, and real estate also is open to have open houses under the indoor event guidance. I think it's important to note that Safer at Home will remain in effect for as long as it's necessary, even as the state moves some communities to protect our neighbors. Safer at Home will always be there as the step back. So if a community is in Protect Our Neighbors and sees a huge surge, they may be asked to step back to Safer at Home. Finally, there's some question about whether we're going to see additional revisions to Safer at Home now that we have Protect Our Neighbors. It's unlikely that we will, but there may be additional revisions based on inconsistencies that need to be addressed in the order. So a couple weeks ago, we had an outbreak in the city of Boulder, and since then there have been a number of smaller outbreaks at businesses. And this chart sort of tracks that trend of the outbreak, and now we're coming back down. We're still not in a great place in terms of our new coronavirus cases over time, but we're getting better. And that's really important because that's one of the metrics for Protect Our Neighbors, which is, again, the next phase, the next public health order phase for the state. Each community, which is the county level, needs to apply to enter into Protect Our Neighbors. And it is, you have to meet a series of criteria, and then you'll basically, the whole community will move into that phase. And really the difference is all of the Safer at Home guidance stays in place, but some of the caps on the number of people change. But all of that would be governed by the social distancing calculator, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and I will definitely show you later in the presentation. Boulder County is not ready to move to Protect Our Neighbors. Our statistics regarding current cases and hospitalization and our ability to track and trace cases has not risen to the level necessary for us to be able to move out of Safer at Home into Protect Our Neighbors. And we do not know when that'll be. It'll likely, what we do know is once we complete, once we get to those levels, we still have to apply and the state has to accept our application, and that could take up to 2 weeks once we meet the criteria. And with that, I'll hand it over to Lalo. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Jesse. Lalo Shash here with Boulder County Public Health. I'm one of the office liaisons here for public health. So no changes in the 8th amended public health order. That's great news that some of the outbreaks are dropping, or at least so please keep up the good work. Please continue to follow the guidelines set out in the public health order. If anyone has questions in the public health order for non-critical office-based businesses, it's Appendix C, if anyone has any questions there. But just please continue to follow the guidelines. So we're looking at 50% max capacity. This is for in-office employees. So again, if you are requiring your employees to return to the office, it would be 50% of the posted occupancy limit, and that this is for workspace. Of course, continue to do those temp checks, so symptom screening for your employees. Encourage working remotely or working at home as much as possible. Of course, you want to encourage outdoor online meetings as much as possible as well. This is where having a coordinator, someone that you deputize to kind of take charge in your office to promote social distancing, correct mask use. This is really going to help your office as well and build confidence with your employees. Think about having a separate entry and exit. Think about the flow of your workers as they come in and as they exit. We've had some complaints about employees receiving maybe masks that were questionable. So really providing a high quality personal protective equipment to your staff is really going to help instill that employee confidence and cut down on complaints to Boulder County Public Health. And of course, post your cleaning logs. Please focus on cleaning, doing extra cleaning on those high touch areas, printers, doorknobs, light switches, bathrooms, and avoid any kind of congregation around vending machines or anything like that. So please encourage that social distancing with your employees. Okay, so we did get some new questions that we added here to the slide. If this is your first time joining us, or if you've been on this call before. So again, 50% max in-office occupancy. This applies to office workspace only, okay? And those are the posted occupancy limits. Additional rooms are not included, so this doesn't count for your break rooms or conference rooms or anything else that you have. This is only office workspace. And again, please make sure that those office workspaces are at least 6 foot apart. If you have more wiggle room there to extend that out, of course, please think about your employees and try to make them feel safer by having those larger spaces as well. A question that came up, are in-person meetings of 10 more, is this allowed? According to the current public health order, these are not permitted. So please, under that Appendix C, it does not allow in-person meetings of more than 10 individuals. And we also had the question come up, well, what if we're in a meeting and everyone decides to take off their mask and everyone agrees? How do I enforce that? Well, as the employer, you are responsible for your employees, especially while they are on the clock and while they are doing business on your behalf in your establishment. If it does come out that you are allowing irresponsible behavior, there could be litigation or legal consequences. So of course, please consult with an attorney if you have questions regarding compliance. But As a general rule of thumb, please follow the public health order. It is the law, and the mask order for Boulder County as well. And if you are unsure if your employees have allergies versus COVID, please take the safe route and just have your employees stay home. And with that, I will pass it off. Thank you very much.
Hello. So my name's Ambra, and I am the liaison for field services, and wanted to let you know we do have an update today for real estate, as Jesse mentioned. So basically, meetings, showings, appraisals, consultation, open houses can occur in accordance with COVID-19 measures in place and using the indoor events requirements. And those can be found under the COVID-19 colorado.gov safer at home guidance. And then you click on that and you can pull up the indoor event requirements in that section. So basically just gonna do some highlights from just the regular COVID-19 measures, and then highlights from the indoor event requirements. So some of the COVID-19 measures that should still be in place: gloves, face coverings, masks required for all in-person interactions. Ensure the 6 foot or more distance between employees, customers, contractors, and visitors at these locations. Maintain detailed log of customer interactions to enable contact tracing. So it's advisable to use a sign-in sheet at some of these open houses as well to log those. And then make sure to disinfect all high-touch surfaces after each showing. And then just some highlights from the indoor events requirement. Limit capacity depending on building size, and this should be calculated using the social distance space calculator. And at this time, I'll have Jesse go ahead and pull that up so you can get an idea of how to use that.
Can everyone see that? The social distancing calculator? Great. Yeah, do you want me to, I can just run through this quickly. So
sure.
If you click on the website, if you go to covid19.colorado.gov or click on the link provided in the presentation, it takes you to this main page here that just sort of illustrates what the social distancing calculator does. It basically takes the 6 foot distance that we've all been talking about forever and puts it into a real world situation where everyone needs 6 feet of distance between them, but we're not all standing stock still and moving together as a unit. We're recognizing that people are going to move around other people. So to do that, what you can do is you put your square footage in, 10,000 square feet, and say I've got a bar and some other things or whatever I have in my business space, and it covers 20% of the floor. I can now fit 56 people in my business, that's essentially how it works. It's that simple to use. I think people are often surprised by what it means to be socially distanced, and also how much of their floor is covered by non-movable objects.
Jesse, I would love to have a 10,000 square foot house, but could you put in maybe a
oh, you want a house?
Comparable,
okay.
Comparable to a house.
All right.
2,400 square feet.
Okay,
3,000 square feet.
There you go. And then, I mean, in a house, you could, if it was empty, you're down to a low number here, and that's again 16 people at a time would be allowed in that space. And that's recognizing all the other things that Ambra mentioned about distance between people and those same rules that have always applied for businesses. So with that, I will hand it back to the presentation. And
thanks, Jesse.
Yep. Thanks, Ambra.
So yeah, and just knowing that the maximum limit capacity is 100. So if you have a really large home, you know, if your social distancing calculator said 110, the ultimate maximum would be 100, and that's outlined in the indoor event requirement as well. And so just a few more highlights. So you must create a queue at entrances and ensure a minimum of 6-foot distancing between individuals. You must hold people at the entrances and operate in a one-in, one-out basis when it is at capacity. And then establish a single direction flow in and out of the building. So you think of, you know, coming in the house, you know, are you flowing people, say, around the living room and kitchen and then upstairs? So just thinking about how you would create the flow. And then also, you know, if there is a back entrance, you might want to take a look at that too, to maybe flow people through the house and then out the door if they can get back outside. Just to kind of keep people moving in and out. And then attendees should refrain from mixing and mingling with other parties. So really, you know, you're just there to, you know, see the house and then, you know, get out. No congregating, mixing, talking, you know, and if you are talking to like an architect, you might want to have those outside so people to ask questions and things like that. And then lastly, just encourage your host and attendees to stay home if sick or if any of them are showing COVID-19 symptoms, and then reschedule the open house if necessary. And with that, I think that's all I have for the real estate update today. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Alexandra. Thank you.
Thanks, Ambra. Hi, everybody. I'm going to cover critical and non-critical manufacturing. And on June 30th, there's an order covering critical businesses for including critical manufacturing that basically made it really, really clear that masks are required and they need to be covering the nose and the mouth, except for when doing so would inhibit the individual's health. This is for workers, and all workers must wear masks unless it inhibits their health. And in that case, they must document those concerns with their employer. And then there's also in that workers must wear gloves as appropriate by industry standards when in physical contact with customers or goods, if gloves are provided to workers by their employer. And I cut the exact wording out of that June 30th order so you could see the specifics and the caveats in it. Also that essential visitors, all visitors must be essential to the business, and all visitors must wear masks too. So that's for critical businesses, but of course all of this is relevant to non-critical businesses too. We can go to the next slide. Thanks. So for critical, I should cover really quickly, for critical manufacturing in the order, it's in the body of the order, it mentions what critical manufacturing needs to go by. It's also under guidance to all businesses on the state site, or best practices for all businesses, it's called. Non-critical manufacturing needs to go by the best practices for all businesses, plus what's in Appendix H of the order. And that changed a few weeks ago and loosened up a little bit, where now non-critical manufacturing can have a 50% capacity per room, up to 50 people, whichever is less, whichever is fewer. And a room has doors and a wall. So it needs to be a pretty large room to have up to 50 people in that. And then implement procedures to ensure that the 6-foot distance is between employees, unless doing so impacts worker safety, and require the masks and the gloves, and essential, as I said before, essential visitors must wear masks. One thing that, so a lot of what non-critical manufacturing has to go under is the same that was mentioned a few minutes ago, as far as establishing a one-way workflow, having a coordinator or a deputized person to help get out the information. One thing that might be really helpful is to make sure that person, the coordinator or deputized person, can speak the language that is in the manufacturing facility. If a lot of people speak Spanish, ask someone who can speak Spanish to help get the word out so it's really clear. It's hard enough to understand all this when it's in English and you're an English speaker. So nothing gets lost in the translation would be a good thing. And as was said before, cleaning high-touch surfaces. The other big thing about manufacturing is cleaning in between shifts, cleaning the areas in between shifts. So that's up for manufacturing, and I'll hand it back over to Jesse.
Great, thank you, everyone. Just want to take a couple seconds to just remind everyone that these industry office hour sessions will be on next week. As you can see, we've got them all afternoon long, and if you have specific questions about either parts of your business that might bleed into another industry, it's a great place to get information. In addition, we have on Wednesdays, in concert with the Latino Chamber, Spanish language session that has a rotating set of subjects and experts at that session. And then finally, just this is our group email address. If you have questions, comments, concerns, that's a great place to get a hold of us. If you have concerns about a particular business, it's great to contact our call center. And just so you know, we did, as of yesterday, reduce the call center hours to 9 to 2. So just a little bit of information there. But with that, happy to take questions.
All right, so we're gonna do this a little differently. Amber, you're kind of gonna be on the spot here. I'm actually gonna allow 2 people to talk. So first, let's get Amy. I'm allowing you to talk. Go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead and talk. All right, well, while we're waiting for that, oh, there she goes. All right, Amy.
Hello?
Hello, you're on.
Okay, I'm sorry, I got that. And thank you so much for giving me just a moment. And I am Amy Aschenbrenner, the CEO of the Longmont Association of Realtors. And I just wanted to make certain for any licensees, whether you're a realtor or not that's on this call, in regards to the open house, please don't take it as casually as many of you have been. We've heard the comments that Yahoo open houses can take place now. We were fortunate enough on this update to get to see the calculator for the size of the house and whatnot. Please take time to read the order and make sure that you understand to the full extent the rules and regulations that are in place in order to hold an open house. If you have any questions on that, don't hesitate to contact either myself or Veronica Priscilla, the CEO of the Boulder Area Realtor Association. We want you guys all to hold these open houses in accordance with the order. Please do not violate the rules of the order. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you for letting me speak.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Amy. I think that just to say she's now moved back to attendee, but I think everybody, all the Boulder County Public Health appreciate someone from the industry coming on and saying, I know it says 100 in there, but in reality, you need to maintain the social distancing, the calculator, the 12, really 12 feet because people are moving around, and be very cautious about, just allowing lots of people into a space because we don't want any outbreaks to be traced back to an open house or to one of those situations. All right, so there's a couple questions about open houses. When they do an indoor event for an open house, do they have to submit any paperwork to Boulder County Public Health for the open house, or does the agent have to submit anything?
No, so basically, as long as you're following the guidelines and exactly what Amy said, make sure you read through it and you're following all of the guidelines, then then you're eligible to have it. One thing I wanted to ask Amy is, we did have, some people calling just before the open houses, just asking about showings. And, basically we're referring them, it's mostly tenants asking about, real estate agents coming in and showing their homes. And Amy, I wondered if you had any guidance to give some of the other real estate agents just regarding, working with people on, what are the language that you're saying when you want to have an open house? I was just curious to see if there's any guidance that you had.
And I've allowed Amy and Veronica Priscilla both to talk, so both of them could answer that question.
So yeah, either one of them or both.
Veronica Priscilla, and the guidance that we've been giving our members is that you need to have a very strong and serious conversation with the seller of the property, and that the best advice is to, if your tenants are not on board with it, you're going to need to take some other precautions. So if a tenant feels unsafe having people come through the homes, your conversation with your seller should be, if something happens, what kind of liability are we going to assume here? So my thought is, if the tenant says no, the answer is no.
Amy, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, that's really it. What Veronica talked about. I think one of the most important things, truthfully, is for the realtors and the licensees to have that conversation with their sellers. The sellers are the ones that really need to understand what it is going to take in order to hold that open house, and quite honestly, all the work that's going to go into it. So that's it.
So Amber, can you talk a little bit about whether or not they should maintain a log of guests, similar to events, and then whether or not they have to screen people that come in for open houses?
Right. So they do, recommend to have a log just for contact tracing. So I mentioned, having the sign-in book when people come in, just so you know who was at that particular showing. And then, I don't think it's necessarily, it's not necessary to do temperature checks, but it is, as I mentioned, putting on there before people come to the open house, just saying, if you're feeling sick, please stay home, or if it's the host, is feeling sick, anything, just, reschedule. I think it's just important, for everybody to communicate so that we don't have, a ton of potential COVID illnesses, people with COVID coming through and exposing other people that are also at the open house to that. And that's really why, the masks and gloves would be important too.
And this would be a good use of those sign resources that we send out weekly, even though it's temporary, that do not enter without a mask, and if you're sick, please do not enter kind of signage that you may not normally put out for an open house, but you might want to treat it like some of the other businesses in town. There is a question about, actually there's several questions about the OSHA guidance for ventilation, about some of the ventilation requirements for an open house.
I can jump in there. The OSHA guidance is not going to be perfect for this sort of business. Obviously, OSHA guidance is for those event venue type situations where you've got, it's a occupational safety. So a house doesn't really fit into that necessarily. But I think the guidance we've been giving from the very beginning is useful here, and that is fresh air is your best friend. Opening windows, allowing airflow through the building is good. If you do, we've had a couple days here where it's been really hot, and I assume many people want to have the air conditioning on in those situations. In that case, making sure that there's fresh air being added to the air conditioner. Recycling air is a bad idea in these situations. One other thing I would suggest is making sure that the filter that you're using or that the homeowner has installed is relatively new for the furnace or air conditioner. But really the OSHA guidance is for industrial style buildings or commercial buildings. So it's a little hard to place over this sort of question.
Okay. Thank you. So again, communication with the homeowner, talking about their HVAC system, whether they have a new filter, just to make sure that we're continuing to create the safest environment for these open houses. The translation between open houses and indoor events, there may be some things that you see along the way, and some of the questions were brought up today, like OSHA guidance, do I need to apply for this event? Those may not translate exactly, so make sure you ask those questions. You contact the folks at Boulder County Public Health for those answers. Again, Amber, just to clarify, they don't need to do a permission type document for indoor events. That's more for the larger events that wouldn't exist like an open house.
Yeah, so say, you have a wedding or like a birthday party, retirement party, then that's a different story. But for these open houses, as long as you're following the guidelines, you don't need to apply.
I think this is Veronica again, and we've gotten some conflicting information to this directive that open houses do require an event request form. So I will see if we can hook up with the Division of Real Estate and find out, get some definitive answers, and then we'll communicate through our channels to all of our members about that, and Amber, you as well.
Okay.
Great.
I think that the log purposes, I think that what we need to do is follow all of those field guides just as we would for showings, and that you're going to need to keep a detailed log of anyone who enters that house. A lot of times when people come to open houses, they really want anonymity, and this is just not going to be the case now. You're going to have to collect all of their data, and you might consider asking for identification just to verify that they are giving you accurate information.
From boots on the ground type of feedback, I know that on the other call, Jesse, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but on the events call, Boulder County Public Health is prepared to take requests or applications for larger events, and that is kind of where they stand. So definitely get that guidance from what you're getting from the state and send it along so that we can help clarify locally for our local realtors. Are there any other questions out there? I think we appreciate Veronica and Amy kind of switching over to the panelist side there for a few minutes. Okay. Well, it's 2:38. I hope that everybody has a wonderful rest of your week, that you're going about some of these new changes in a safe manner. If you have any questions between now and the next call or at any point, please do not hesitate to reach out to the email that's on the screen, or to me if I'm the first one you can get to. Or I know Amy and Veronica, you do a wonderful job serving your members in the realtor communities. We want to get your questions answered because we want safe practices. We want us to move forward. Just last week, we watched bars have to reclose. So we don't want to do that with any of these newer opening guidelines. And we will see you next week. If you want to join us, there will be a recording of this call that will be available, and I will send that out. Thank you to Boulder County Public Health. You guys have been great. I think we're on week 8 or 9 of these, and we continue to get lots of questions. So we appreciate the time.
Thank you, Corinne.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, everyone.